Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Transition Crossroad podcast, where we actually explore the evolving dynamics and the complexities impacting Africa's energy transition. And on today's episode, we're actually talking about a very interesting topic that we've crafted, harnessing Africa's geophysical potential, opportunities, challenges, and pathways for sustainable energy transition. From the topic, you already know it's going to be an interesting conversation. And interestingly, we have on today's podcast, we have the privilege of having with us someone that is a technocrat that have actually built strong pedigree within the clean energy space. Is the person of Mr. Ayomide Ogungbemi. Mr. Ayomide holds a PhD in energy systems engineering and with 2 master's degrees, one from Cyprus International University, then another one from the prestigious UTF University in Netherlands. Interestingly, he's currently serving as an energy analyst at the Energy Commission of Nigeria, where he's been instrumental in shaping energy policies in Nigeria. One of his notable contributions is actually leading a high-impact research collaboration with the Lagos State government in Nigeria that resulted in an EU fund for the establishment of a cutting-edge hydrogen power coupling for the city of Lagos in Nigeria. He also has to his belt the fact that he has served as, or he currently serves as the lead researcher for the Nuclear for Climate, the largest young organization advocating for safe nuclear energy in the global south. Interestingly, he also has different fellowships. One of them, for instance, is the Cloud Energy Fellowship in Netherlands, and he has a couple of other fellowships to his belt. So from this profile, we already know he's someone that has the wherewithal, the capacity, has the experience to speak to this conversation. So we are very happy to have him here with us today. So Mr. Ayomide, please welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let's just dive straight to the conversation. It's interestingly, this is something that's very dear to me, is the fact that we all know Africa is a hotspot for renewable energy. There are different data across, for instance, you only see report from the International Renewable Agency, that's EIA, pointing to the fact that Africa has the potential. But amidst these potentials, there are huge energy deficits. It pinches me, honestly. So it begs the first question I want us to start with this conversation, which is, why do energy deficits still persist in resource-rich African regions? Like, for instance, you have Nigeria, South Africa, and Ethiopia, and that have been identified as resource-rich countries, but there are still huge energy deficits. So, what are your thoughts on this? Why do these energy deficits still persist?
All right. Thank you so much. I know it's an irony. Take, for instance, a country like Nigeria with huge energy resources, both renewables and fossil fuels. I mean, we have coal, we have natural gas, we have oil, we have hydro, we have wind, we have solar. I think we have virtually everything with the exception of nuclear power, which not enough exploratory studies has been done on uranium. But we find that such a country like ours, we still face serious energy deficits, and this is across the board, from fuel or gasoline scarcity for cars, even up until electricity, cooking gas for cooking. You have energy deficit across the board. And there are many reasons for this. One of them is inadequate infrastructure. Okay, our infrastructure is very, very terrible. It's low. Nigeria has an installed capacity of about 12,000 megawatts, and we only distribute about 5,000 terawatt. And compare that with Brazil. Okay, we are a nation of over 200 million people. Compare that with Brazil, which has 200,000 megawatts installed capacity. Okay. So you could see the disparity. You could see how we are so much lacking when it comes to infrastructure. Brazil, with 200 million people, roughly the same population as Nigeria, has 200,000 megawatts, and they are still being installed. A lot of capacity is still being installed. And here you have Nigeria, and we are still battling with just 12,000, and we are not even able to distribute. So our infrastructure is really, 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 really not something to write home about. We also have the issue of financial constraints, and that's true. So basically, the budget, for electricity, for energy for infrastructure development for these countries usually are very low, are very subpar. We are not able to meet with international standards. And then we also have the issue of local factors. So each region has its local factor. In Nigeria, you have the case of infrastructure theft. I know these things may seem somehow bizarre to people who are not from this area, but it actually does happen.
For sure.
In Nigeria, you have infrastructure theft, both in the renewables, okay, like in the renewable sector and in the fossil sector, even in the electric sector. We have the stealing, or what we call oil illegal bunkering, oil and gas. You also have the looting of government infrastructures, electrical infrastructure. Power stations are being looted, the electric lines, the copper wires are being looted and melted and so scrapped. And even in the renewable sector, you still have infrastructure lootage, okay? Sometimes standalone units, if they are not properly kept well, or if they are not properly looked after, they are being looted. You have the problem of solar street lights, along the roads, they are being looted. So you have these local factors. There are also a lot of other factors.
For sure. That's very true. Like you rightly pointed out, the problem of this energy deficit, like you rightly pointed out, I think it's a complex interplay of different forces, of different factors rather. Like you rightly pointed out, the financial lack of finances there. Like recently, I saw a report. That was last year, where they said that Africa receives just about 2% of global funding in renewable energy investments, which is really subpar, like you pointed out. So, like you rightly pointed out, it's true. But there is another dimension to this conversation, is the fact that if you want to talk about, let's say, for instance, let's dwell on the financial aspect. If you want to talk about financial aspects, if you want to talk about bankability of projects, there's a part of it that has to do with, is your data reliable? Because I know in this part of the world, especially in the global south, we have a data challenge, right? Like for instance, you see in the oil and gas sector, the private sector, they have data, they don't want to put it out there. So you find the stakeholders, as you engage with this conversation, they find it difficult to get this data. So it brings to the conversation of resource mapping. Currently, there is this general notion, or rather, there's this general consensus that Africa is resource rich, there's a lot of renewable energy potential. Is it really true? Because when we start having a conversation, the availability of a resource also depends on the technology that's available to get that resource at an economically viable scale, right? So it brings me to the next question, which I also think is also very important for us to dwell about in this conversation. How reliable and up-to-date is resource mapping data across different African countries? We can look at this regionally, or we can look at it at a specific country context. And if these gaps exist, for instance, is it an issue of accuracy, or rather, or do you think it's an issue of accessibility?
Okay, all right. I think it's a combination of both factors. I will start with the last statement you made, the issue of accuracy and accessibility. Yeah, it's a combination of both factors. So generally, we have most of our data in Africa. The recent ones are private-led. Yeah, they are done by private companies. Governments, they're trying their best, but most times, the government, when it comes to data, they look at it as more of we are coming from a regulatory approach. But although there is serious work being done, recently the Energy Commission of Nigeria, in partnership with the statistical body, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, and with the IEA and the UN Energy Power Program, they came together to do what we call energy statistics for Nigeria. And I see that as a very, very big leap. So currently there are works ongoing to at least bridge this data gap. Will it be enough? No, it's not going to be enough, because we have the data in Africa, using Nigeria for an example, and also Africa, because I've also been privileged to work with some other African countries, especially the West African region. Now you find out that there is the problem of data limitation. So you have this situation whereby not just private companies, but government companies, government institutions are kind of skeptical. They kind of feel not really ready to release data. Okay, and I'm not about huge data. I'm talking about even data to researchers. We are privileged, at least in Nigeria, to have so many researchers doing masters, doing PhD in other countries, Western countries in the East Asia and all over. And we have a situation whereby these students, they are not able to get data to even do proper research. In the situation whereby they are even able to get this data, you have a situation whereby most of some of the data are outdated. Some of them are like 10 years old, and thereabout. And many of the times they are outdated. So you have this situation. So it's not even accurate and it's not accessible. And I think what we can do, what government can do is government can come in, okay? We know that private companies, they put a lot of money to get this data, but government can come in to request some part of this data that may not really, may be harmless, it may not be detailed, but at least the data may give some insight, and bring this to the database. And there is also one thing I want to mention here where government can come in. It's in the aspect of standardization, okay? Because we have sometimes the methodologies for gathering this data, may not be the same across private companies. Whereby the measurement, the basis of measurement, differ from different companies. So we also have this. And I think what government can do also is we shouldn't just put all our efforts, it's important to get this data, but it's even more important to monitor this data. So we don't, after 5 years, we are back at square one. So 10 years ago, some government regulatory body will come and say, okay, we need this data. And then a lot of people was done. Data was gathered, and then physically everyone goes to sleep. It's not monitored. And then 5 years, 10 years after, we are back to square one.
For sure.
Government must ensure that there is accurate, monitoring of this data. I think I'm going to leave that here.
I like that part because also coming from the research background, the variability in the methodology also poses questions to the accuracy of the different data sources, right? It's also very important that government has to standardize. But I know that might not be easy to achieve. Because for instance, I've been within the energy transition sector in Nigeria. Even getting stakeholders together on board, it's a huge challenge. And I think that scenario is also, I believe that scenario is also similar across other African regions. So, but now, picking from where you stopped, the role of government, how governments can get these things done. Do you think there is a dimension of governance frameworks to these things? Because I feel that if there are right frameworks on ground, it is possible that, for instance, before let's say hypothetically now, before our renewable energy sector came to this point, if we had a reliable framework on ground, maybe framework about the standardization of this data, framework that stipulated the need for private sector to put the data out. Do you think if these frameworks were on ground, do you think we'll be here now? But then again, we're already here. Going forward, do you think if we're able to put the right frameworks in place, that these challenges can be circumvented?
Yes, absolutely. So I think generally, I know I haven't been in Nigeria for too long. That's since our independence. But I think there is a renaissance that is government regulatory bodies are beginning to wake up and recognizing that they have tools or some powers that they can use to actually improve the sector. Personally, I am of the opinion that government has no business running a business, especially in the Nigeria, because wherever there is a government, wherever there is a government holding a sector, that sector is more or less crippled. The telecommunication sector, we had the government holding it, and then up until 1999 and thereabout, it was being privatized, and then we had serious infrastructure growth. And I think there also the government wanted to do that to the electricity sector, but then there was a lot of kickback against it, and we had the same, we found ourselves in this situation where we are. And now the government is waking up to say, okay, let's privatize it. So I believe that the efforts that government put into running businesses and making, close to total failure in running business. I think that effort should be put into regulation. I believe that governments are good. They are government, they are good when it comes to regulation, and we've seen this time and time over again. I also think that when it comes to regulatory frameworks, personally, I was in talk with the previous Director General of the Energy Commission of Nigeria at a meeting at the UAE, and I posed this question to him and said, what do you think about our policies? Do you think our policy are data driven? And he looked at me and smiled and said, listen, there is no shortage of policy, especially, she was talking from the energy sector, but he said that we do not lack a shortage of policy in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. What we do lack is enforcement. Enforcing that this policy that have enforcing them on ground. And recently there was a research done by Cleantech on regulatory bodies in the power sector in Africa and with focus on Nigeria. And it was discovered that majority of the times government bodies are not empowered to actually enforce the policy they are making. So you have sometimes a situation whereby government officials are able to maybe create policy frameworks, recommend them, and then put it. But the power for them to implement them, it's not there. There is no incentive for them to implement them. The power is not there, and these policies are just there, lying there, and it also leads to a case whereby we have policy overlapping. Governments don't. Sometimes we have a situation whereby government institutions overlap. So take for instance, if you wanted to come in to take for instance. Get the hydropower plants, up and running. You have so many government institutions that are overlapping at different sectors, at different stages of that project. And so you have a situation whereby there is bulky bureaucracy and then nobody is actually implementing what they should implement. And then, it all just, so I think there should be like a disentanglement, okay, whereby each institution, government just knows what they are doing, why they are here, and they are empowered to enforce why they are operating or to enforce what the policies are actually put in place. So I think I'm going to leave it there.
I like that perspective of the fact that there are a lot. Indeed, what we lack is not policies. It's really the implementation. Because for instance, even if you take a look at, let's say for instance, the Electricity Act that was passed as the Electricity Act 2021 that empowers states to. But you see the dynamics there. It's from the dynamics of the electricity. So you still see the federal, the center holding the power, even though the Electricity Act says states can actually get to generate their own power. So that is very correct. Then taking this conversation forward, especially within the African context now, we are seeing individual nations trying to upscale their renewable energy capacities and all that. And interestingly, you even see that the funding coming into Africa, for instance, there's this report by EIA, or I think that should be Bloomberg, that pointed out that the renewable energy funding coming to Africa is even duly distributed. I think it goes mainly to Egypt. I think South Africa is there, Kenya is there, with very little going to with very little funding going to the other countries, despite the fact that even this funding is just about 2% of global renewable energy investment. So it brings to the point of the fact that instead of individual countries working to solve this problem individually, how about we solve this problem from the perspective of regional blocks, right? Let's say, for instance, now, I'm aware that I think there is this idea of West African power pool that seeks to integrate national power systems like within the West African region into a unified regional electricity market. This kind of ideas, maybe it can be done in the south, it can be done in the north, it can be done in the east. Do you think the creation of such regional blocks, do you think that can help harness the resources, whatever the capacity, whatever we need to be able to upscale renewable energy investments or deployments across Africa?
Yes, actually, there have been revolutionary, ideas, policies, but like we said earlier on, sometimes more or less they end up on the paper. So we've had we actually have four power pools. We have the West African power pool, we have the East African power pool, the North African powerful and Central African powerful, and I think there's also one being done by the South African countries. I'm going to talk more on the West African powerfuls and a little bit on the East African powerfuls. So actually, there should be cross-border, cross-border. It shouldn't be just each country is doing their own thing, because Africa is very large. Of course, many people will know the issue of the Mercator maps and all that. Africa is very large, very big, and many of the times the communities are fast-paced out from each other. So take for instance in Nigeria, we have the Northeast corridor, and the Northeast corridor sometimes may be closer. In fact, majority of the time they are closer to some other countries than maybe power plants coming from the south, or from coming from the south. So there have been issues, and it's not just about electricity. Also, it comes in the aspect of infrastructure. We have a dam, a very large hydro dam being built by Ethiopia, and you have Egypt, threatening that this is going to lead to war, if you guys don't stop this. So we have some of all these, problems, happening, many problems happening, and put together, you see that it's actually a conflict that is brewing. And I think that regional governments should be able to solve this, but our regional governments are also facing, troubles of their own. We have a situation like in West Africa, whereby, we have, some of the countries, just walked out and said, we don't want to be part of you guys anymore, and they created their own. And then, of course, we have this situation also. So I think that personally, what we can do is, what governments can do to ensure this is, the regional bodies should be largely independent. So we don't want a situation whereby South Africa is controlled majorly by Nigeria, and East Africa, controlled majorly by Kenya and all that. So we want to have a situation whereby regional bodies are truly independent, and then there are regional contracts, and these contracts should be binding. So take for instance, Nigeria wants to build a dam or wants to make use of some dam, along the Niger, or maybe Cameroon or any of them wants to make use of the river, the Niger River. There should be a situation whereby there are regional contracts, and these regional contracts should be strict and should be binding by each of these countries. You shouldn't have a situation whereby each country does whatever is within their borders. We have a situation whereby in Nigeria, because we are the Delta, just before just getting into that situation, whereby we have series of floods. Of course, research has proven that it's not just mainly due to the dam, up of the Niger, but also it's not just mainly due to that, but minorly, it's also attributed to that. So you have this situation, and it's not just in West Africa. You have this across board. We should have a situation whereby regional governments come regionally, establish a power pool, and it shouldn't just be on the paper. They should enforce it. I'm really happy with the Pan-African highway that is going, and Nigeria recently is building their corridor. And then we should have projects like this, whereby governments come in regionally, they come together, they put regional contracts, and they ensure that they are well and they are binding. And then also, I think that the regional institutions also, apart from being independent, they should be empowered. Many of the times they are weak. Many of the times what they just do basically is research. They don't really have power to enforce, or build capacities. And because most times they just do research. And that brings me to my last point, the point of research. Now, I think that the regional research centers that we have, they are doing well, but we need to see more from them. We need to see a true Pan-African energy research center cutting across borders, not just for the regional, regional blocks, but across, the length and breadth of Africa. We need to see a true Pan-African research center, and bringing not just national energy policies like we have the Nigerian national energy policy, we have that of Ghana, we have that of Kenya, Sierra Leone, Ethiopia, and all that, but a true Pan-African energy, a true national energy research policy that shows what each power plant or where each country, how optimally they should do. I think just like Europe has done, if You have Europe, currently now they are going about the hydrogen basin. We need to have such things going on also in Africa. And I think I'm just going to leave it here.
There is a part of the conversation that actually caught my attention is the independence of these regional blocks. But then again, we can't have a conversation of the independence of these regional blocks. Start talking about the influence of foreign companies or foreign multinationals or foreign governments, because we all know that in terms of renewable energy resource, Africa is a hotspot, and we can't shy away from the fact that there are different international interests currently at play in Africa that are invariably impacting how optimal Africa's renewable energy sector can function. For instance, take a look at what is happening in DRC currently. No matter how we look at it, we can't shy away from the fact that there's influence of foreign companies or foreign nations at play. So it brings to the question: we can't shy away from the fact that as Africa stands now, Africa cannot come up and beat its chest that we are done with foreign nations. So the question is, what are the trade-offs? How can Africa navigate this influence of this foreign influence? Why being able to hold it, like for instance, its renewable energy resource in such a manner that it's able to possibly solve the problem of energy poverty? Why not also having to step on the toes of this foreign country? Because obviously they have the resources. Africa doesn't have the resource. No matter how we try to be Pan-African, we need the finance from them. That's just the truth. So yes, I know it's delicate, but we all know it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. But from your thoughts, what do you think Africa can do, considering the influence of these foreign countries or foreign companies having immense influence over our renewable energy sector?
Yeah, all right. So you've rightly said we need the financial resources from most of from these foreign nations, and that is true. And I think what Africa can do, we should continue to position ourselves to attract foreign investors. I mean, we have the labor, we have the human capital there. We should continue to position ourselves. China has done it, and it shows that this can be done. India is currently doing it. We must position ourselves to attract foreign investments, okay? Because these investors, they provide capital, okay? They bring in advanced technology expertise that many local industries will back. But however, we must ensure that we don't make the mistakes that we made before, okay? So we have to ensure that when these companies come, first of all, we must strengthen our local regulatory frameworks, okay? The regulatory bodies, the policies that are being in place, they must be empowered and they must be strengthened. We need to also ensure that, because we must also work on ourselves also, okay? Not just this. We need to also ensure that there is transparent licensing agreements, okay, that prioritize, national interest and also the local interest, because in Africa we have the local factor.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone must know this. Every foreign company here must know. We have the national factor, okay, as a nation, but in that particular region where you are coming into, you also have the local factor. Definitely. All of those people, indigenous who are
for sure.
So government must, enforce, transparent licensing agreement, prioritizing national interest, and also, the local interest of the local residents residing in that locality. And then you also have we must ensure that we prevent resource exploitation. Okay, so I think Zimbabwe has done this in a situation whereby they have lithium, and then the government put a ban that you cannot just mine raw lithium out of the country.
You have to process.
There must be value-added manufacturing. I think our government also can do this. We shouldn't have a situation whereby you just come, mine out the raw resource, and then refine it, add value to it, and then sell it back to us at expensive. I think Nigeria over the years has learned about the need for value-added manufacturing in the energy sector, thanks to the recently built largest single train refinery that we just completed, that was just recently built. So we have that also. And there should also be, I just a little to talk about the judiciary system. There have been talks, about the judiciary system being, overcrowded. Like the backlog of cases are so terrible that sometimes you have judgment, you have cases that last 5, 10 years, 15 years, and there is no judgment yet. So we must clear all that and ensure strict, renegotiation clause. We must put ourselves, we must defraud. We must put ourselves, we must review ourselves, refine ourselves, evaluate ourselves, and put ourselves out there, to attract this foreign investment. And when we put ourselves there to attract this foreign investment, we must ensure that when they come in, that our policies are strong enough, to ensure that the wealth that these foreign companies come are not just repatriated, but that part of it is kept in the local economy. And then what we must also do is, while these companies are here, we must also develop local capacity. So these are the lessons we must learn. We must develop local capacity. We must ensure that there is talent transfer. Okay, not just a situation whereby a project is being built and then the foreign companies are there, the expatriates are working there, and then at the end of the day, when it's installed and everything is done, the expatriates go back to the country. And then when we need, maybe maintenance or something, we have to now go and bring them back again. So we must ensure that all these are well treated.
So basically the scenario you painted is just quite similar to what's happening in the oil and gas sector. I think that cuts across Africa, where the resource is basically just taken and shipped out, refined products brought back. So now it just goes to show that if we don't get our facts right, if we don't hit the ground running in a manner that is optimal, it's obvious we might end up having the same challenges we got from the oil and gas sector. Which honestly, it gives me cause of concern thinking about this, that we've gone through this road before, and if we're not careful, we might end up going through this road again, and it's indeed, it will not be good. So your final thoughts. I want you to give your final thoughts on, so considering what I just said now, what are the lessons from past resource governance challenges we've had across Africa that the emerging renewable energy sector can learn from, that the emerging renewable energy can leverage to ensure that it does not go through same challenges that the oil and gas sector went through? What lessons do you think African countries can pick from this?
Okay, so I would say number one is we should put in for the long-term vision, okay, not just short-term, because we had the situation of the oil and gas whereby it was developed, and then suddenly we had the oil boom of the 70s, and resources were coming in, and then we didn't have any long-term plan. We just gulped it, and then you had ballooning corruption, which the effect we are still suffering even up to today. So I think this time around we must be more careful. We must have a long-term vision, okay? Where do we want to be in the next 30, 40, 50 years? Okay? Not just short-term or the medium term, okay? Those are important, but the long-term. Government must ensure, okay, that sovereign wealth funds are established, okay? So as the renewable resources are being, used or utilized, I'm talking about the minerals, okay, because Africa is the basic, okay, for the critical minerals that are needed for the energy transition. So government must ensure that, sovereign wealth funds are being created, to reinvest, renewable energy profit into public infrastructure. We must have this. Also, I think part of what we must do, the lessons learned, is to ensure, like I said also, the local content, okay? Local content should not be left behind. In regions, okay, where these resources are being utilized, the people there must also be carried along. Training programs, public, private, local partnerships, okay, not just public-private, local partnerships. Local content policies. Okay, so these big companies should also carry smaller African companies along. Okay, like service industry. Also, I think training programs, to have a renewable energy, skilled workforce, especially the local areas, because what we must understand is when we don't take care of those local areas, take for instance a situation whereby land is a very important asset or important, very contentious asset in Africa. So you have a situation whereby you come to a place and then you just put in solar power plants.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
Yeah, you don't educate the people about how the solar power plants benefit them. You don't carry them along. You don't set incentive for them to keep it. You don't even tell them about I think now we have agrivoltaics, whereby agriculture and solar voltaics goes together, and you don't even, tell them about all this, and then you just put it there. And then you have a situation whereby in a few years' time, there is looting. So we must learn that. Then also, another thing we must learn is also there must be environmental and social responsibility. Okay, we shouldn't have a situation whereby projects are being carried out without environmental impact assessment. We shouldn't have a situation whereby we don't prioritize community ownership and beneficiary models. We should also have a situation whereby we don't promote sustainable land use planning. Okay, so we don't have a situation whereby resources are being mined and then it's not sustainable. So I think these are the things that we must learn. And then lastly, the banking and the finance. Okay, so we must ensure that while these companies come, and they are being banked, of course, by foreign financial institutions, we must also ensure that we strengthen our local
to come up to the capacity. Yeah, that's very true. So thank you very much, Mr. Ayomide. I know if we continue having this conversation, it's definitely not going to end, because the conversation around renewable energy upskilling in Africa, it's so complex, and it's so, for me, I find it very intriguing. I don't think I can ever get tired of having this conversation, and I think it's also safe. But I think at this point in time we have to cut it short so we can continue the conversation. So thank you very much for taking our time to be here. I really appreciate this, and I hope to keep the conversation going as a corridor conversation. So thank you very much for taking our time to be here, Mr. Ayomide.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.